I was slugging through my day, doing new mom stuff, feeling tired, and then bam, it happened when I was giving my son a bath. I thought it would be so easy for his head to slip below the water and never come back up. The thought sent this violent shock through my body that like made me physically flinch. I was like, what the hell? Where did that thought come from? Is that something I'm thinking of doing? Am I just like connecting with how insanely vulnerable my baby is? Am I starting to go crazy from the pressure of keeping this completely defenseless human alive? I pushed the thought aside, and I went on with my day. And then it happened again. I was walking with my son in the baby carrier on a sidewalk on a busy street, and I thought, what if we just like stepped off the curb? A car would immediately hit us. It would be like so easy for catastrophe to happen. So easy for me to cause this catastrophe. And, you know, I had to walk far away from the curb because I was so afraid of this thought. I was like almost scraping the fence because I was like, I just couldn't stand right next to the curb. And yeah, so I started to think, am I depressed? You know, like why am I having these thoughts? I can't think of anything that would be more horrible than something bad happening to my baby. So why am I having thoughts about traumatic things happening to my baby? And looking back, it's like not surprising, but at the time I just like couldn't reconcile the two. It's like, well, I thought, well, if I actually don't want anything bad to happen to my baby, then I shouldn't be having these thoughts. And you would think that I would have asked somebody about this, right? But I didn't. I was too afraid that I would be told that I had some like fatal flaw, that it wasn't safe for my baby to be with me. So I held it in. I kept having these thoughts. And every time I did, I would try really, really hard to distract myself. And luckily about, 6 months after my son was born, these thoughts got less intense and eventually they just went away. And I never thought much more about them until I started teaching childbirth prep classes, and a few really, really brave women started asking me about their own scary thoughts. And I realized, I was not the only one. And I started reaching out to perinatal mental health specialists that I know, and they told me that these thoughts are so normal, that actually almost all new moms have these scary thoughts. And these experts, this is really important, they helped me recognize that feeling like something horrible was about to happen didn't mean that it was actually going to happen. It was just a false thought triggered by the fact that, my newborn was so vulnerable that I was almost entirely responsible for keeping him alive. And the same goes for, most of the other women having these scary thoughts. And according to the primary therapist that I saw at the time when I was going through this, what I experienced was actually pretty mild. Unfortunately, some women get so buried in these nightmarish thoughts about their baby that they can barely function. And, one of the most frightening mental phenomena some parents experience is thoughts of intentionally or accidentally harming or even killing their child. And this is something called intrusive thoughts. A lot of the thoughts I had were just like about all the horrible things that could happen, but in most of the cases, I wasn't actually having thoughts of me being the one to inflict this harm. But for a lot of parents, they do have this thought of, I could push my baby's head under the water, or I could like leave my baby out in the cold. Like they have these really intrusive thoughts, and almost all of the people that have these thoughts report that they don't actually want to harm their baby, but they're still having vivid thoughts of doing so. And these thoughts can become really frightening for a parent when they're doing something like bathing their baby, driving with them, partaking in other activities that present obvious risks. And it can cause an almost constant state of paranoia. And keeping things under control can like take a debilitating amounts of energy, to stay calm and just get through the day. And for obvious reasons, this is a mental experience that few women tell anybody about out of fear that their baby will be taken away from them. But many don't realize that these thoughts, like I said before, are more common than you would expect. There was a study that found that between 70 and 100% of new mothers report unwanted intrusive thoughts of infant-related harm. And half of all new mothers have intrusive thoughts about harming their infant on purpose. So again, like these thoughts do not make you a monster. They are just a sign that you are experiencing a very, very treatable psychological condition. And any mental health specialists worth their salt will not even think of reporting you, as long as you can honestly acknowledge that you find these intrusive thoughts disturbing. That's the key. As long as you acknowledge that these thoughts aren't good and they're not things that you would want to do, you're doing fine. It's when you don't realize that these thoughts are bad, that's when immediate support is needed. So when these intrusive thoughts become consistent and are regularly impacting your ability to function, they might actually be a sign of postpartum obsessive-compulsive disorder, of OCD. And this can manifest as, obsessive attempts to suppress the intrusive thoughts, for example, like partaking in obsessive rituals that you're convinced will prevent any harm from befalling your baby, maybe like constantly praying or constantly checking on your baby. You might avoid triggering situations like bathing the baby or driving with them. And not surprisingly, OCD has been connected to issues with serotonin regulation and elevated levels of oxytocin, which are both hormones that are impacted during pregnancy and the postpartum period. And obsessions with intrusive thoughts, they can also be triggered by stressful situations and a rapid increase in responsibility, which obviously are both major, major elements of parenthood. And because of these factors, some mental health specialists believe that slight OCD tendencies might be a totally normal byproduct of the postpartum experience, and that probably a lot more women have some of these OCD tendencies than many realize. Okay, and so with all that said, it's really important to talk a little bit about postpartum psychosis. So this is the rarest but most serious cause of those intrusive thoughts. So this condition, it usually consists of an inclination to harm the baby, extreme paranoia, hallucinations and delusions, sleep disturbances, and disorientation. It typically shows up about a week after the baby is born. And unlike mothers with conditions like postpartum OCD, those with postpartum psychosis, like I briefly mentioned before, they don't usually realize that they shouldn't be having thoughts of harming their baby. They don't find the thoughts terrifying or appalling. And this is a situation that requires immediate intervention. But if that's not you, if you recognize like, yeah, I'm having these scary thoughts and I really don't like them, I would really like them to go away. And, say these thoughts are limiting your ability to function, the first thing to do is to get support from a perinatal mental health specialist. And what they'll probably do is recommend cognitive behavioral therapy. They might, in some situations, recommend medication, if some of these thoughts, are being caused by an issue that you might need some medication for. And So certainly follow their advice before you try any of the other suggestions I'm going to go over, as you deserve the support of somebody that can give you really unique or individualized suggestions based on your unique circumstances. And this mental health specialist, they can also do a really great job of helping you normalize, what you're experiencing, and normalizing this experience can provide immense relief. So I really, really recommend seeking out that professional support. And, and with that said, I want to acknowledge that summoning the courage to tell someone about your intrusive thoughts might be one of the most challenging things you ever do. But again, the good news is that a condition like postpartum OCD, it's no longer seen as like a scarlet letter. Ongoing research is helping us understand that these conditions, that they are not a sign that someone is like a dangerous miscreant, but that they're just symptoms exhibited by, perfectly normal humans experiencing completely treatable psychological phenomenon. So there's no shame in speaking up and asking and accepting help. And in the most extreme cases, again, like in the case of postpartum psychosis, speaking up can potentially save the life of mother or baby. And so from there, after first seeking that professional support, consider the following. So remember that these thoughts are not real. So one of the only good things about horrific thoughts about your baby is that they're likely a pretty shocking contrast to your other thoughts. And this contrast can make it easier to pinpoint when a thought is intrusive. Again, a thought that is produced not by the real you, but by the condition you're navigating, like OCD, anxiety, depression. And this realization, remembering this, can help you separate from the thoughts and remember that they are not indications of something that you will do or that you want to do. And they are not at all markers of how you feel about your baby. Next, write down what is true. So if you start getting lost in all of those scary thoughts, all of the horrible things that could happen, really home in on what's actually real by writing it down. So for example, you might write down, I grew and birthed my baby. That wasn't easy. It took strength and courage. I provide a home and nourishment for my baby. I am not broken. These thoughts are not me. These thoughts are not true. I love my baby. That is true. Keep writing until you feel really planted in your truth. You can also bring yourself back to reality by focusing on your 5 senses. So again, if your mind starts like swirling into all of those like horrible what ifs, you can ask yourself, okay, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I hear? And what do I feel? Like when I touch something, what do I feel? Keep listing things that your 5 senses are experiencing until those intrusive thoughts start to loosen their grip on you. Something else that I think is so crucial is to remind yourself that you are not crazy. When you have intrusive thoughts, you're experiencing a symptom, just like someone with the flu experiences the symptom of a fever often. And just as the flu can strike anyone, intrusive thoughts can strike anyone. So when you have the symptom of intrusive thoughts, continually, over and over again, remind yourself that you are a whole, amazing, very sane person having an uncomfortable experience that will pass with the right support. And again, as long as you recognize that the thoughts are disturbing and nothing that you should act upon, you're doing fine. So of course, these thoughts aren't fun, and they could be a sign of, postpartum OCD, an anxiety disorder. And so because of that, again, you want to get help. I know I'm a broken record with recommending the professional support, but in this situation, seeking a mental health specialist is so crucial. Finally, you can find a support group. So again, in addition to that one-on-one care with the mental health specialist, leaning into in-person or online support group that's composed of women having similar thoughts, and usually somebody that's really qualified in guiding women through, that experience. It can help you feel less alone. It can normalize your experience, and it can help you develop a deeper understanding of what you're going through and gain different perspectives. And to ensure you find a quality support group, you can ask the mental health specialist you see for recommendations. So again, remember that as long as you recognize that those intrusive thoughts are intrusive, that they're scary, that they're nothing you would ever want to act upon, you're fine, and this too shall pass with the right support.